Good afternoon and welcome to ORL Split A for round 21 of the championship. I am Yusuf Milky Siro bin Sahel. Alongside me is the one and only Mr. Jacob Hancocks. And as I say that, Jacob, how are you doing?
Finally, an ORL A split, my first time here, and I'm very much looking forward to it.
Well, if last week was anything to go by, which was a thrilling Mexican Grand Prix, tonight should be equally as good. USA a track with plenty of overtaking opportunities and some nicer twisty sections to excite the drivers as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's always a really fun track, actually. You've got a couple of good overtaking spots, as you mentioned, at the end of both of the DRS zones. And in particular, the sort of the back straight, not the pit straight, but the back straight, at the end of that one into turn 12, you can battle. If you're going side by side, you can be battling all the way until the end of turn 16, which is that really tricky sort of off-camber left-hander. And it's really fun to watch sort of extended battles that go through there. We've seen it in real-life stuff, and we see it in league races there as well on the game. So it is a lot of fun.
Well, you mentioned real life stuff. I believe it was in 2018, I want to say, Max Verstappen, Kimi Raikkonen, turn 17, final lap of the race. A move that eventually, well, saw Max lose that P3 post-race, but we do see excitement. And to any people who remember back to season 12 of the online racing lead, Danny Berejne had a rather thrilling race, not from his side of things, but definitely from a spectator side of events, because he was on the alternate strategy. Safety car came out at the worst possible time for him, and I remember him going in the pits on a set of fresh soft tires, coming out dead last, about 3 seconds behind the person ahead, and he stormed his way through the field up to, I think it was a P4 or something ridiculous. So, you know, even if your race does go down the gutter somewhat, you can still fight your way back through. And 20 corners here at USA, a 3.4 mile circuit in Texas. And I guess everyone's favorite is got to be Jarno Opmeer.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Jarno Opmeer, you can just look at the driver's standings. You can see just how far ahead. He's more than 200 points ahead of everyone else. He's the F1 esports champion. Like, there's no reason to expect him to do anything other than win. But he does have some strong competition here, particularly Barry Boromand. If he's going to be racing today, we'd be expecting him to take a significant challenge to Opmeer. And there's plenty of other drivers of very high caliber here as well.
Yeah, and speaking of that driver standings, we have it up on the screen. Rather interestingly, the battle for P2 is not over just yet, because there are 39 points separating Danny Moreno and Tomek. So, Tomek, he got a P2 last time round. If he can get 2 more P2s and a fastest lap somewhere in there, that's second place in the championship secured. So, it's not over yet for Tomek, and is not over in this battle for second place.
Indeed, yeah, he could well take it. I mean, Danny Moreno's in a pretty solid position, though, a pretty significant gulf between himself and Tomek Poradzic in third, as you mentioned. But we'll see whether the Polish driver can do it or not. But definitely will need the luck of the green, and will probably wanting to be winning the races rather than just coming second and sort of scraping his way through.
Indeed, so, but of course, I mean, winning when you've got the likes of Jarno Opmeer is difficult. And then when you add on top of Jarno Opmeer, Mr. Barry Boromand, who's been in absolute stellar form recently, it makes it that much harder.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, again, I mean, I've got to go back to it. There's so many other high-quality drivers here. There are multiple other esports drivers that we're going to be seeing. We've got the likes of Bench Jabo Konyi as well, also known as Photon from back in the old days. And the Hungarian's been doing a great job as well, currently sitting fourth in the championship. Alessio Di Capua has great raw pace, a little bit inconsistent, but there's so many threats to it. So, you know, if you're Tomek Poradzic, you're thinking, okay, sure, if I get second in both races, that's great. But that's, you know, that's not that easy.
No, it is not easy to say the least. Matthias Collegon currently fifth in the championship. Pardon me, I think he dropped, yes, down to sixth as Alessio Di Capua jumps up to fifth. The Ruben Vallejo in seventh place, 90 points. He was so close to a podium last time out in Mexico, and if he had a few more points, he'd be right up there in this battle for fourth, which is currently being led by Ben Sabikoni. But you know, we're talking less than 20 points separating fourth all the way down to Josh Idowu in eighth. And even Nicolas Mateo, who finished second on track in Mexico, on 84 points in ninth in this battle as well.
Yeah, for sure. So there's a lot a lot of permutations still to play out in the middle of the championship. Maybe not at the very top, as we mentioned earlier, Jarno Opmeer being just several country miles faster than everyone else over the course of the season, at least. So, but definitely a big scrap to go on for the remaining position. So we'll try and keep our eye on that as well. And you guys should be keeping your eyes on it at home as well, because I'm sure the drivers will be battling tooth and nail for those positions.
And of course, the Constructors Championship as well. Alfa Romeo have that in the bag. They had it in the bag last round. I think they had it in the bag, you know, heading into Japan. They are now pretty much 150 points clear of Mercedes, who also have second in the bag over McLaren as well. But that battle for third place, it does rage on. McLaren, only 32 points ahead of Ferrari, who are a further 3 points ahead of Haas. And with just a race tonight in USA, followed by the race next week in Abu Dhabi remaining, it's whatever happens here could see that battle for third place decided.
Yeah, if McLaren have a really big result here today, or if Ferrari and Haas fail to have big results, then that could well decide it in favor of McLaren. So the Ferrari drivers, the Haas drivers, they'll be wanting to make sure they show their true form, show their true pace here in Austin, and try and be hoping as well that the boys in orange have a little bit of a tougher time than usual.
Yeah, and McLaren, which is Tomek and James Baldwin, they've been putting in some decent results lately, and they extended their gap over Ferrari just that tiny bit last time out. And if they can do that once again, that is the championship in the bag, because the maximum points that you can bring in, 25 plus 18 plus that one for fastest lap. And if my math serves me correctly, which, to be fair, it doesn't usually, but that is only 44 points. So they just need to pull out another 2 points over Ferrari to secure that third place.
Indeed, yeah. It shouldn't be too much of a tall order as long as their drivers actually show up and race, which I believe at least one of them certainly has already. So, yeah, I think McLaren should be feeling good about that one. But we will see, of course, still plenty of stuff to play out. All kinds of things can happen. Turn one here at the US Grand Prix is a really tough one. It's definitely a front wing breaker. You see a lot of drivers spinning on the exit of turn one as well on the opening lap, because it just sort of it invites you to go three wide. And then on the exit, it makes you think, well, maybe this was a bad idea after all.
Yeah, and it's what you mentioned. You mentioned that if you go for a move in turn 12, you could be running side by side throughout so much of the lap. But it's the same even if you try to make a move into turn one. You could be running side by side throughout the entirety of Sector 1. So we can be seeing so much battling, and we can be seeing those DRS trains as well. So the question then does become, do you battle with the person near you, or do you just work together with them, try to pull out maybe a second, maybe 2 seconds of a gap before, you know, fighting for that position?
Yeah, and that's what we see so much, increasingly more so as well, with the esports caliber drivers on the F1 2020 game and on 2019 as well, is that you get these DRS trains forming, and the person in second often could overtake the person in first if they wanted to, but sometimes they don't want to. A lot of the time, there's a huge amount of tactical sort of to and froing going on between the drivers throughout these DRS trains, and sometimes it prevents a little bit of the raw action we like to see, but a lot of the time it can be a really fascinating chess match to watch as well. And there does always tend to be plenty of action once the first pit stops come through regardless.
And we saw in the last race in Mexico, it was Jarno Opmeer and Barry Borroman pretty much leading the way, but they weren't able to pull away completely. And Tomek was right up there with them. Mexico saw the two strategy really, coming strong. And every time, Tomek just pitted that little bit earlier, tried to get that undercut off, and it worked. The undercuts do work. It does get you that track position, but then the question is, can you hold on to it when the driver behind you is just sitting behind, saving up fuel, saving up ERS, and then one lap they pull the trigger, just like we saw Jarno in Mexico, and he did it on the perfect lap as well. Right when he got past Barry, he then had 3 cars in front of him to get DRS and was able to use that to pull over a second ahead of Barry. And then once you've got past that 1 second gap, it's fine. You can keep on pushing and you're not under the same amount of pressure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone has such even pace, really, when it comes down to it at the sort of F1 esports level, that if you do get outside of about 1.2 seconds, finding 2/10 of a second on the guy ahead of you is really difficult when you're both almost going as fast as it's possible to go. So, yeah, if you get out of that DRS range, it really can be completely critical. And you mentioned with Jarno Opmeer pulling it off in Mexico, that's become his hallmark, right, as a driver. It's what we've seen time and time again in the F1 Esports Pro Series. It's just his ability to pit later than everyone else, sacrifice the undercut in a lot of cases, but then just know that he's going to have the on-track ability and the raw speed to push through with the fresher tires at the end and to take a good result, and more often than not, a win.
Yeah. But with that said, Jacob, we are making our way into the game for qualifying, because there are 18 minutes, or well, now just over 17 minutes, and drivers are starting to head out of the pit lane.
Yeah, first thing you might notice here, rather wet here in Austin, which is a little bit unusual, not something you see every day in Texas, but yeah, full wet tires coming out, very, very wet on the track as well. Although the sky doesn't look quite so dark as it might have done over turn 1, but no, yeah, it's still looking pretty grey, so you might well see a full wet qualifying here for these guys.
Yep, and we'll have to see whether the race will be dry or not, because usually, pretty much 100% of the time, drivers will always take a setup that matches whatever the conditions are in the race. So we don't know what the drivers know, because of course the drivers have, inside their garage, they can see what the weather forecast is meant to be during the race.
Indeed, yeah. We've got a grid of 16 drivers here today. Then no Bauri Bormand, unfortunately. So we're not going to be relying on him to try and take the challenge to Jarno Opmeer. So it is going to be up to the likes of Tomek Poradžić and then maybe some of the other fellow F1 esports drivers in the forms of Michael Romanidis and Daniele Haddad to see if they can do anything about the Dutchman who just cannot stop winning. Currently sitting in the pits, though, holding his cool, him and Kruzix, yet to go out.
Yeah, Kruzix, an old familiar name for ORL fans of the past. Tom 97, I'm not sure if this is his debut race. From my notes, it is. So it will be interesting to see how he can perform. I'm sure he's got quite a few number of fans in the chat who will be spurring him on throughout the entire night. Yeah,
definitely a popular guy, Tom 97, and with good reason. Very nice guy, and very fast as well. Has been doing well in some of the other leagues recently. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he stacks up against this level of competition, the highest level of competition you can find in league racing.
Yeah, also got Josh and Andy showing their faces as well. I haven't seen them on the standings, so I think this is also their debut races. Either way, still one of their earlier races, if not their first. Shanaka Clay also showing up as well, as people might remember before he became, the well-known esports driver, VSR infamous. So good to see him back on the field as well. Arsen Kardinov also out, and he's on his outlap, as I'm just keeping an eye on Tomek, who is on a flying lap, making his way through the S's of Sector 1.
Yeah, let's see what the Polish driver can do here in the opening exchanges of qualifying. It's all pretty tentative, as you'd expect. But it's really interesting, actually, watching him drive in these super wet conditions. I was about to say he hardly ever has to counter steer, but then through turn 10 he did have to get, or not quite opposite lock, but he had to definitely steer into a slide there. But throughout the S section, he was really smooth on the steering wheel, hardly making any mistake, hardly having to make any adjustments, and it all looked pretty neat and tidy. But maybe a bit pedestrian. Maybe it just tells us that he's not pushing that hard, or maybe he's just in supreme control of that McLaren.
Maybe he is in supreme control, and you always see it though when you go from the good drivers to the insanely quick drivers, the alien drivers as many like to call it. The back end, they always seem to be on that limit, but just at the right amount, and it always looks like that back end is about to just completely explode on them, but they always just have it under control, and it's a masterclass of balance that they are able to show.
Of course, yeah, and it helps by the fact that they're doing all these very aggressive upshifting that you tend to do in these soaking wet conditions, and Tomek has definitely been a proponent of that thus far this lap. We're about to see Ruben Vallejo, I think, set the opening lap time of the session. There it is, a 1:47.5, and Tomek goes comfortably faster on a 1:46.9, so already getting first blood in this session, but Nicolas Mateo goes and gets second blood with a 1:46.6, a full 0.3 faster than Tomek. So that's a good lap time there from the Spaniard.
Yeah, now I'm keeping an eye on Jarno Opmeer, because if anyone's going to go and smash those initial banker laps in the wet conditions, it's probably going to be Jarno, as Ruben Vallejo puts in a decent lap. Michael Romanidis goes even quicker, 46.1. So question is, when will those 45s that start to come through? Still early stages in qualifying, and I wouldn't be surprised if drivers had put on maybe a few laps of fuel to acclimatize to the wet conditions on circuit.
Yeah, I think it's always the best way to go about it in wet qualifying sessions, right? I mean, the tire wear, pretty negligible in general. If you put in a few laps of fuel, you can make sure you have a higher chance of being out there when the track is at its driest. You can get more used to the way the track feels and learn your braking zones, as they will change and shift throughout qualifying. So you want to be going around the track as many times as possible so you stay as in tune with it as you possibly can. Michael Romanidis there sitting at the top on that 1:46.1. That is a very good lap time compared to the rest of the field. Tomek's lap still holding up pretty well in third, but there goes Jarno Opmeer. And of course, he goes to the very top, though only just managing to get ahead of Romanidis there.
Yeah, so Jarno jumps to the top of the standings. Provisional pole, Arsen Kardinov in the second Red Bull on a lap. Andy in the other Red Bull, he's done a 52.3, so definitely not a representative lap at the moment. Josh in the pit, still Shanaka Clay on his outlap. So let's ride on board with the Russian driver to see how he completes the remainder of Sector 2 and Sector 3, as we've got the good old glitch where, or at least for me anyway, Jacob, where it says that Tomek has set the fast lap of a 46.9. That is, of course, incorrect.
Indeed, yeah, I've got that one as well. So it's not just you. And yes, indeed, Tomek Parad just that 146.9, pretty good lap. Not the best lap in this session. Jarno Opmeer is the holder of that one on his 146.139. We'll see what the rest of the drivers can do to try and respond. We've seen a few come in through a second lap around, as Romanidis does that exact thing and goes up to the top with a 145.9, first driver into the 45s. Arsen coming around the final corner now in the Red Bull. Where's he going to slot in? It's up to 6th.
Milky.
Yeah, and
Is there a chance that the stream is down or not?
The stream is not down on my side. It's still streaming and outputting.
Okay, because he says that the stream is down, or like that there is a lot of lag.
I'm outputting about 3,000 kilobytes per second. I am dropping frames, so I can adjust that. But it should still be streaming. There's no reason why it shouldn't be streaming, because I've got connection to the game, so I should have connection to YouTube as well, and it should be uploading that feed. So I have no idea why it wouldn't be streaming, because I don't have access to YouTube. So what does it say on the YouTube? We have to be live.
I don't know, to be fair, because he said like he could restream and choose stream if that's the only possible option.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, to be fair, but
I mean,
is the stream good or not at the moment?
The stream's fine. There's been no issues. It's been outputting. It's been dropping some frames, but it's been outputting it.
Can you maybe text with R7?
I mean, possible? Like, if he's got a problem, why can't he just message? Like, there's a production chat.
Yeah, he's messaging you, apparently.
He's not. I've literally got the production chat open.
We'll text him in a bit.
Are you sure the stream's down? Because it's up on my side.
Yeah, it seems like it's live on my phone, but...
I think it's live, but it does seem to be very laggy, according to at least what the chat's saying. I've just gone into it now.
I mean, I've been between 2.5 Apologies, we had a few technical difficulties, but we are back in. Hopefully, they have been fixed, or at least fixed to some extent. And Jacob, just under 8 minutes remaining in qualifying. Jarno Opmeer now on a 45.8, just 1/10 ahead of Michael Romanidis, and that could all change.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's gone around a couple more times, set a couple more laps on that wet set of tyres, and was able to improve ahead of Romanidis, but still not by very much. So the Greek driver definitely giving the Dutchman a run for his money in this one. Tomek's managed to get a little bit closer as well on that 1:46.3, but he's still 0.4 of a second away from Romanidis, so he'll want to get a bit faster than that. Then you got the two Spaniards, Nicolas Mateo and Ruben Vallejo, in the sort of mid 1:46s. And then the rest in the low 1:46 or the high 1:46s, or even into the 47s.
Yeah. Let's see as well if anyone else can spoil the party, such as one of the Haas drivers, Josh. He's still yet to set a lap, and he's on a hot lap, and now pretty much everyone has set representative lap times, with the exception of Mr. Anker and Krusix in the Ferrari and the other Haas, respectively.
Indeed, yeah. So we'll see whether Josh can get a lap time on that board or not. But the Haas team in their battle for third in the Constructors' Championships, they'll be wanting something slightly better out of qualifying than 15th and 16th on a 16-car grid. So it's about time that Josh and Krusix were able to try and put them a little bit higher up the order there. Ben Shabukonyi down in 11th. I guess we'd expect to see him a little bit higher than where he is right now on that 1:47 flat. But he is out there on a fresh set of those wet tyres, looking to go again.
Yep. Tom 97 currently up in P8 of 46.879, and you look from Ruben Vallejo in P5, 46.7 all the way down to Arsene Kardanov in P10. Just a couple of tenths separating, and it does seem that the wet conditions, I mean, we're talking about 2 tenths separating 6 drivers, but across the whole field, it does seem that the wet conditions have spread the drivers a little bit more.
Indeed, yeah. I think it is something we tend to see as well. A lot of these guys will have practiced in the dry. Fewer of them will have practiced in the wet. And even if you do practice in the wet, it's harder to sort of practice for specific conditions because, of course, if you try and practice in the wet, it's not necessarily going to be the same level of wetness as what you're going to see in qualifying, in the race, etc. So when you've been able to practice these specific conditions less, you're less likely to get to your sort of optimum level. And as a result, we're going to see that field spread out a little bit more.
Yeah, we will indeed. Jarno Opmeer in the pits, Tomek, Nicholas and Ruben all on their out laps. So they're going to be starting some of their final flying laps any moment now. And I want to take a little look actually at Shanaka Clay, because we haven't sat on board with him yet. And he's on a 46.8 in P7. And just at 1/10 could see him jump all the way up to P5 as he dives on into the pits.
Yeah, well, so going into the pits is not the way to jump up further up the order. Michael Romanidis, though, is improving out there in that Williams on that fresh set of extreme wet tyres. So this lap is on track to move ahead of Jarno Opmeer as long as he can get it together in this final sector of the lap as well. He was about 1.5 tenths up through the second sector.
Yeah, so this is a good lap as well from Ben Sabakonyi. Again, that little bit up on his previous lap, and can he improve more? Can he get into the thick of the action in that top 10? Michael Romanidis goes quicker, a 45.826, and it's just a game of tag right now between Michael and Jarno. Just one jumps ahead of the other, then the other leapfrogs. It's just a hopscotch going on.
Indeed, that is the way it's going at the moment, and they seem to be just leapfrogging their way further and further away from the rest of the field as well. As Mr. Anker had a bit of a moment there in the penultimate corner, but I think he's just going to be heading back into the pits. Ben Sabakonyi coming around the final corner, the Hungarian down in 11th, up to 5th, so that's a good improvement from him. Bridging that gap between the two Spaniards, Nicolas Mateo on that 1:46.4, and then Ruben Vallejo on the 1:46.7. Bit of a gap was there between those two, but now Bent has filled it nicely.
And Tomek is on a lap and is improving. And as I say that, Falconati goes at P3 on a 46.1. And I think Tomek is going to be nip and tuck with whether he can steal that P3 away from the Renault driver.
Yeah, we'll see what he can do now, as he's not really made the apex of turn 16 there, but I think sometimes you want to avoid that, particularly in the wet conditions. It lets you get a run out of the exit there, allows you to get the power down just a little bit better. Triple right-hander all looking okay. Some slight corrections there from Tomek, maybe pushing a little bit harder than what we saw at the very beginning of qualifying, also almost losing the car on the exit of turn 19, but holds on to it nicely. Again, not quite making the apex of 20, but his clean run on the exit and up towards the line. It's into the 45s, but only just and not enough to get into that top 2.
That's still a good lap, though, from Tomek, getting into those 45s, and maybe he'll have time for a cooldown lap and then one final push lap, and maybe he can find that one extra tenth to really get him up in the thick of things between Jarno and Michael Romanidis. And speaking of Michael Romanidis, he just completed a lap, but not enough to improve. So he's going to have another cooldown lap before starting for one last go.
Yeah, we're getting right towards crunch time now in this qualifying session, so these drivers aren't going to have too many more opportunities. One, maybe two more laps available to the vast majority of these drivers. Tom 97 just coming over the line here. What's it going to be for him? It's an improvement by 2.5 tenths, and that's enough to put him up into P8. Ruben Vallejo falling quite a long way down the order now as multiple people are improving, and the Williams driver has not been able to do so in the last few minutes. Where's Jarno Opmeer? Just entering turn 1 on his lap.
Yeah, and as we were talking about Tom 97, also Danny Haddad went even quicker, 46 dead from the Racing Point driver. So he's up into P4, just a little bit shy of Tomek, but definitely up there. Who else do we really think could improve? What is Kalsper putting out? He's a 10th up at the end of Sector 1, currently on a 47.3, a 4 tenths shy of Arsene Kardanoff in P11.
Yeah, hopefully he'll be able to improve, get him up there into the top 10 in that Ferrari, but we have to see whether that's going to be the case or not. Pretty much everyone out there right now, everyone is on track. Only Josh and Kruzix, the Haas duo, are not on a flying lap at this moment in time. So who's about to come across the line? It's one of the Haas's to start the flying lap. And then it looks like Tomek coming around, but he has been on a cooldown lap, so he will not be improving. Arsene Kardanoff in the final corner. He's pushing. He's up at 2 tenths or thereabouts, and is up a lot more than that in the end, up over half a second and up into 7th as well.
Yeah, a couple of hundredths behind Nicholas Matteo. Will he live to regret that? Kalsper still pushing, making his way into the final corner. He's only 8 hundredths up, and this is not going to be enough, Jacob. A 46.8. He goes quicker, but not by enough, and he's right on the back end of this long train of cars that goes all the way up to Ben Sabo Konyi in P8.
Yeah, and he doesn't even have the sort of saving.
Oh, look at Jarno, Jacob. He just completed a lap. That's a 45.2.
Oh.
That is disgusting from Jarno Opmeer. Michael Romanidis has dived into the pit, so he can't improve. Jarno Opmeer, by 0.6 of a second, has provisional pole.
That is just such a great lap there from Jarno Opmeer. Incredible stuff, really, as if we needed to say it more about this man. But he goes and just keeps on getting better and better. Now, what can Tomek Paragic do? He's probably the only driver out here who can realistically even begin to challenge Jarno Opmeer at this stage, now that Romanidis has entered the pits and finished his qualifying session. Paragic seems to be improving, but I don't think it's going to be enough here for the Polish driver in the McLaren.
No, I don't think it will be enough. He might be able to take a P2, but not that top spot. Falconardi has improved. He's up to P4. Shanaka Clay, 46.0 Racing Points in 6 and 7. Ruben Vallejo improves to a 46 dead. He's up to P4. Nicholas Matteo crosses the line, a 46.2. But what can this man, the Polish driver, the younger Pole, Tomek, through the final corner? Of course, no DRS in the wet conditions. Bit slippery, 45.49. Great lap from the McLaren.
Yeah, he found the same sort of level of improvement that Jarno Opmeer was able to do, but he was improving from a lower base than the Dutchman, who is still pushing out there, by the way. He's still trying to go faster. He's only about half a tenth down on his current provisional pole lap time out here, so we might well see the Alfa Romeo driver go even faster. Still, Shanaka Clay has invalidated his lap, so he is not going to be starting any higher than 6th on the grid. Daniele Haddad around the final corner we go, using all the road through 20, really struggling to hold on. He does improve by a couple of tenths ahead of Ruben Vallejo there.
Yeah, there's Ferrari into the wall. Jarno Opmeer goes for 400 slower, so still a mighty quick lap, but not enough to improve. What about Mr. Anker through the final corner? 47.0. and crashes right next to his Ferrari teammate Calcifer.
And right at the death there, Bentsab Okonyi moved up into 5th from 11th, going a good chunk faster than he was able to do before. So nice lap at the very death there from the Hungarian to steal a spot on the 3rd row of the grid.
And don't forget as well what this means in terms of the championship, because we talked about how Danny Moreno is not here tonight, and the fact that he's only 39 points, was it 39? Yes, 39 points ahead of Atomic, and Atomic's in P2, so he might be on track right now, Atomic, to being in a position to jump ahead of Danny Moreno come that season finale race in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, if he can keep Michael Romanidis and Daniele Haddad at bay, double esports duo there on the 2nd row of the grid. So bit of a daunting one to start behind you, but I'm sure Tomek is well accustomed now to driving alongside the very fastest. He himself is one of the very fastest as well, so I don't think he'll be too daunted by it.
Yeah. So just to confirm the starting order, Jarno takes a pole ahead of Tomek and Michael Romanidis. Daniela Haddad in P4 ahead of Bensabe Konyi. Ruben Vallejo P6 ahead of Falconati, Shanaka Clay, Nicholas Matteo, and Tom97 completing the top 10. And now, Jacob, it's that moment of truth, isn't it? This is a bit where we find out, is the race going to be dry or wet?
Exactly, and I think that's a pretty emphatic dry right there. That's a very blue sky indeed. That's more like what we're used to seeing in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, this is what we came to see. Some nice sunshine, some great racing on action. Always nice to have a bit of rain, but it's always nicer to have it in qualifying, to see drivers really on the edge, you know, during those push laps. And then when you have the race, that DRS Open does lead to a bit more exciting battling.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the wet conditions are nice for qualifying because they really test the drivers. They're nice if they come at a sort of weird time during the race where drivers have to make some kind of interesting strategy call. But for a whole race to be wet, I don't like to see it so much. You know, it just tends to exaggerate the dirty air effect, prevents any real battling from going on unless someone makes a significant mistake. And with this caliber of drivers, mistakes are few and far between.
Yeah, but when those mistakes do come, they could be absolutely huge. Now, Jacob, I'm not going to ask who do you think is going to win, because I'm pretty sure we're both going to say Jarno Opmeer. So who do we think are going to be the other two drivers on that podium?
Okay, so I think the easy answer would be Romanidis and Paragic based on what we saw in qualifying. I think that maybe Daniele Haddad might steal, though. I'm going to say Tomek Paragic and Daniele Haddad getting ahead of Romanidis. I'm going to say maybe that Michael Romanidis' pace was more about the wet conditions than it was about the circuit, but we'll see. Maybe the Greek driver can prove me wrong.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have faith in Tomek, and I'm going to guess. I'm going to go with Mr. Danny Haddad. I think he can pull something out of the hat. He had a strong race in Mexico. Very unlucky. Last lap of the race, suffered a puncture, and it cost him what could have been a fantastic result. So hopefully his fortunes can swing around here in the Circuit of the Americas.
Indeed, yeah, we'll see who is going to be able to take the top spot when we get to that checkered flag. And we'll just take a look and see the tyres that everyone's on. Of course, it is those mediums, with the exception of Andinator, Andy in 15th on the softs.
Yeah, so interesting, I guess, that Andy has gone for those soft tyres, but in the opening few laps, he's definitely going to be able to have the advantage over everyone around him. Maybe an early safety car could help him as well.
Yeah, I think that's partially what he's gambling on here, right? I mean, everyone else, literally everyone else, thinks the medium tyres are the best ones to run around here. And he hasn't got some sort of incredible strategy that people don't know about. He's hoping for some chaos in this race, and hopefully that he can look to take advantage of it. Whether it be rain, which seems rather unlikely at the moment, or whether it be a safety car, a virtual safety car, something along those lines. Nevertheless, that is what he is looking for here.
But Jarno Opmeer will have that clear run into turn one. It's not a long run into turn one, but it's uphill, and braking points can differ absolutely massively. So, you know, if you do just brake that little bit too early on those cold tires, you can get absolutely swamped, and you run a bit wide, and then who knows what can happen.
For sure, yeah. So we'll see then. As the driver's about to line up on the grid now. Kruzix and Andy bringing up the rear. Josh was disqualified I don't think that's going to matter too much once we get going. The Haas drivers starting 14th and 16th couldn't improve much from when we last saw them in qualifying, so they will be eager to make up some positions off the line.
Yeah, we'll try to keep an eye on how well Andy does off the start on those softer compound of tyres, but otherwise we're looking at the Alfa Romeo and the McLaren on the front row of the grid. Jarno Opmeer lines up on pole once again. Tomek Paradish in P2, and it's lights out and away we go. It looks like it's actually a pretty decent start from Tomek as Jarno closes the door into turn 1. Tomek's going to have to look for the outside. Michael Romanidis having a look as well, but now Danny Haddad squeezes down the inside as the cars make their way into turn 3. No changes in the top 4, but Ben Sabikonyi up into P5 and now side by side actually with Ruben Vallejo, who is up to P6. Shanaka Clay in P7 ahead of Falcon Nardi, who has just been overtaken by Nicholas Matteo as Tom 97 completes the top 10.
Yeah, Falcon Nardi struggling a little bit there in the Renault, might lose another position, but no, make sure that Tom does not have an option on the inside of turn 10. I've got to say, that was an incredibly clean opening lap as one of the Ferraris going for a move back there. That's Mr. Anker up the inside of Arsene into turn 11. We'll compromise him all the way down this straight. He'll get a worse run than the cars around him, so I'd expect to see Arsene taking this one back. Although Anker is holding on. He's got the slipstream of Tom 97 ahead.
And we can see this from Andy's perspective. Arsene Cardenov has a little look, but Anker goes super late on the brakes and goes down the inside of Tom 97. And Tom will have the inside now into the double right-hand. He'll squeeze his Mercedes through, and Arsene Cardenov just watching all of this unfold. Can the Russian find any advantage? Anker still side by side with Tom 97. Tom on the wider line can't find the traction. Tries to squeeze his nose in, but Mr. Anker slams the door shut in Tom's face.
Meanwhile, further up the order, Shanaka Clay is on an absolute tear right now. He took Ruben Vallejo halfway around the lap, and he almost took Bent Sabukonyi a couple of corners later. And Bent himself is really struggling now. He's made a mistake in both turns 19 and 20, and as a result, there's the opportunity for the Racing Point driver up his inside into turn 1. He brakes later than the AlphaTauri, but Bent Sabukonyi holding on around the outside. This will turn into the inside here for turn 2, but they're going to be going side by side into the S section. Always a very tricky thing to do, and in the end, the Hungarian cedes the position, and that is up 3 places now for Shanaka Clay.
Yeah, great move from Shanaka Clay, and Nicholas Matteo finding a way past Ruben Vallejo as well, but Shanaka Clay, did you see the drive he got out of the final corner? It was incredible. He was on the back of Ben Sabukonyi from the very exit of the corner. It was a mighty impressive, and I was racing points in P4 and P5 in exactly what they need in the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a nice move there. And now Nicholas Matteo might be looking to make one of his own as Bent Sabukonyi going backwards at a rate of knots right now. I think they almost made contact there. And no, Nicholas Matteo is lagging backwards. That's a bit of a disaster for him. He almost goes into the side of Falcon Nardi. Thankfully, he ghosts in time, but he is lagging a lot. He's a bit of a menace out there in the Alfa Romeo right now. Not through any fault of his own. Going side by side with Tom 97, who's looking to capitalize on it, though. No mercy from the British driver, who hangs him out to dry on the curbing on the exit of turn 16 and around the outside of 17 and 18. He should get the move done, but they're still going to be going side by side in towards turn 19 here. Tom with the inside once again, but still the Alfa Romeo keeps his nose in there and in fact takes the position back.
And the Red Bull of Andy looking to get involved in the fight. He jumps ahead of Tom 97, and while we've been focusing on the battle in the midfield, as now Arsene Cardenov looks for a move up ahead, you can see Andy having a go at Nicholas Matteo. Tom hanging it round the outside to reclaim a P12. Fantastic move from the British driver, but while all of this has been going on, Jarno's pulled 1 second ahead of Tomek, who's pulled over a second to Michael Romanidis. So it's 1-2 right now for the Veloce drivers, and they are pulling away from Michael Romanidis, who's now going to start to come under a bit of pressure from Daniela Haddad as the DRS is enabled this time round.
Tomek needs to know that he's our only hope right now to try and take the fight to Jarno Opmeer, him or some kind of safety car. But at the moment, Jarno Opmeer is saying a firm no to that one. 1.4 seconds or thereabouts between himself and Tomek Paradzic at this stage of the race. That is a statement made early on by Jarno Opmeer. Before DRS was even available, he was out of it. And out of there as well. Further down the order, Ruben Vallejo and Bent Sabukonyi going side by side, not for the first time this race. Oh, that was a big move there from Bent. He has to back out of it in the end after making contact with the side pod of the Spaniard. And Ruben Vallejo is in 6th.
Yep, and thankfully it doesn't look like Benz has any visible damage to his front wing, but Ruben Vallejo up to P6, as you mentioned, Jacob. Can Ben Saboconi hold on to this P7 against Falconardi, who looked so quick for so long in qualifying, and it's a surprise to see him all the way down in P8 currently.
I don't think he's going to be down in P8 for too much longer. He's all over the rear wing of Zaboconi, who is still going backwards there in the Alpha Tauri. Great qualifying and a great opening lap as well, but since then, nothing has gone the way of the Hungarian, who's down 3 places, tries to get the switch back here through turn 1.
And now it's side by side, but Nardi just gets a slightly better drive, and he'll hold on to a P7. Falconardi critically is within a second of Ruben Vallejo, so he will have a DRS from the Williams driver on the back straight, and actually Falconardi is closing in at a rate of knots on Ruben, so keep an eye out on the Renault throughout the rest of the race.
For sure, yeah. It's hard to say how many of these drivers as well will have suffered a lot in the wet conditions and how many of them actually have the front-running pace here. If only they could get free of the traffic, so they'll all be desperate to try and prove that. That's why we've seen the battling being so frenetic. But every time they battle like that, they're wearing their tires out a little bit more than the guys at the front. They're using their ERS more than the guys up ahead as well. And they are just losing time on track. So everything about this battling, if you can't get it nailed in one quick, clean move, it's only going to hurt you in the long run.
And one driver who'll be wearing out his tyres more than anyone else is Andy. Not because he's being too aggressive, but because he is on those soft tyres. Andy has climbed up to P11. But don't forget, he is on those softs, so he should have the advantage in these early few laps.
Indeed. He has already got a penalty to his name, though, so that's a bit of a disadvantage to temper the advantage that he has, although it's not going to become a disadvantage to the very end of this race. But yeah, he's not made as much progress as I think he would have wanted to on those soft tyres. He's close behind Nicolas Matteo. It's a pretty big DRS train that he's right in the midst of right now, and it's so hard to pass the cars ahead when they have DRS on their direct opponents up in front as well. So yeah, maybe stagnating just a little bit here for Andy.
Yep, and up ahead we can see the Ferrari of Mr. Anker closing in onto Ben Saboconi, and also at the sharp end of the field, Tomek 1.5 seconds behind Jarno Otmir, but Michael Romanides is within a second of the Polish driver, so we might start to see some sparks flying in the battle for P2 in just a couple of laps' time. As that's Nicolas Matteo, that's from really far back. He dives it down the inside of Mr. Anker. I think it was a clean, squeezes them out wide as well, and that looked like a fantastically executed dive bomb. And now Andy's going to be having a little look as well. The Ferrari goes defensive, and Andy will sweep around the outside. Surely he's got the better traction from the soft tyres. He gets squeezed out wide, but he'll hold his position down the inner side into turn 13 and 14, and he's got the job done. Andy up into P10, but the Ferrari will come back down the inside. There's almost contact, and Mr. Anker loses the back end for a moment, and that moment is just enough for Andy to hold on to that top 10 position.
Yeah, robust and frankly over the line defending there from Mr. Anker, pushing Andy off on the exit of turn 12, giving the Red Bull driver his second 3-second time penalty of the race. So Andy will definitely be looking to appeal that one thereafter. But he has got the position done, so at least there's that. And in all of that battling, he still didn't lose DRS to Nicolas Matteo ahead, which was also very, very important. So up into the points for now, but that safety car that he's going to be wishing for isn't coming quite yet.
No, it is not. And Tom 97 now on the back of this group as well, just a couple of tenths behind Mr. Anker. And it does seem to me that Mr. Anker is starting to struggle on those medium tyres a bit, really dropping down the order, starting to struggle for traction. And you can see it in the S's, how much that Andy is pulling away in the back end on the exit of turn 10, really kicking in as Kalsifer picks up a 3-second time penalty.
Indeed, yeah, down in 14th position, the Estonian not having the race of his career, that much is for sure. Just falling out of DRS range of Arsene Cardinov up ahead as well. Meanwhile, Mr. Anker and Tom 97 are battling down towards turn 12, and it's pretty much just a wave by there as the Mercedes drives clean past the Ferrari.
Yeah, cleanly done, and up ahead I think we saw Nicolas Matteo having a bit of a lock-up, and now Andy is all over the back of the Alfa Romeo. Nicolas will be getting DRS from Ben Saboconi up ahead, who in turn does not have DRS from Falconardi. He's looking to battle the Williams of Ruben Vallejo for P6. So 6 laps into the race here in the Online Racing League, round 21 of the championship. and the battling has not died down one bit.
Yeah, and looking back up towards the very front as well, Tomek is not falling much further away from Jarno than he did on the opening 3 laps of the race, and he's also spending quite a lot of his ERS to remain there, but so is Jarno, to be fair. Michael Romanidis has comfortably more left in the battery compared to the McLaren up ahead, and then to the Alfa Romeo in the lead as well. So the Greek driver will be feeling quietly confident. I'm sure he's not necessarily fully aware of that, but I'm sure he'll know that his ERS levels are pretty high. So if he wants to make a move on Tomek, if he wants to really mount a charge on the Polish driver up ahead, he probably has it in the tank to do so.
Yeah, he probably will, and we saw it last time around in Mexico, the driver behind just being able to save up their ERS. And, you know, sometimes you're in this situation and you have to think, would the smart call be to, you know, let the driver behind through so you can save up your ERS? And is track position or having, you know, the ERS advantage, what is more important here at the Circuit of the Americas?
Well, Falconardi is deciding that it is track position as he's sending it up the inside of Ruben Vallejo into turn 12, and he gets the move done nicely there. No problems for the Renault driver, who was able to dump some of the ARS he had saved behind the rear wing of the Williams, and that's a very brave move up the inside of 16 there from Ruben Vallejo. Speculative, to say the least, but doesn't come off in the end, and Falconardi up into 6th.
Yeah, Nicolas Mateos picked up 8 time penalties, closing in onto Ben Sabo-Conye, who's still over a second behind Ruben Vallejo. But what can Falconardi pull out? He's at 3.2 seconds behind Shanaka Clay, and both the racing points of Shanaka Clay and Daniela Haddad have just been, we haven't really spoken about them. They've just been in their own little race, just sitting at the back of it. There's a group that leads up to Tomek in P2, and they've just been waiting, biding their time.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what we'd have been seeing from the Racing Point team throughout the whole of this year. If they had 2 drivers in that team, we'd be seeing them 4th and 5th pretty much the whole time. But yeah, Daniele Haddad and Shanaka Clay doing a great job at the moment, and they're still well in touch with Romanidis and Paragic in 2nd and 3rd as well. So they can still both be hoping about a podium.
Yep, Tom 97 very close to the back of Andy, and Andy is on the verge of dropping out of that 1 second DRS zone to Nicolas Mateo up ahead. And I think Andy won't be getting DRS. We'll have to see whether that rear flap opens. Here we go then, onto the DRS straight, and Andy's rear wing does not open. And Tom 97's rear wing definitely is open because he's closing in on Andy at a vast rate of knots. Down the inside he goes, up ahead. Ben Sabo-Conye and Nicolas Mateo are having a bit of a ding-dong battle. Nicolas will try to defend down the inside. They get close, but there is no contact between the pair of them as they make their way down towards turns at 19, into turns at 13 and 14, still side by side. Nicolas Mateo trying to hang it all the way around the outside here in Texas, and he holds it. He'll have the inside down into turn 19, and he'll get the job done, but Ben Sabe wants to look back, switches to the inside, switches to the outside. Can't find a way through on the Alfa Romeo driver, Nicolas Mateo. He gets DRS on the start-finish straight as well.
Yeah, Nicolas, though, he did dump every last drop of his ERS on that one. Meanwhile, Ben Sabo-Conye, he's up at 70%. So I think the Hungarian might be fancying a move back on the Alfa Romeo driver sooner rather than later, unless Nicolas can really make it up here in the opening sector of the lap where you don't tend to use that much of the ERS through the S section. If he can build a 1 second gap here, he should be okay, but that's a tall order. I don't think he's going to be able to match it, so Bence should be in with a shout of taking the position back this lap and then maybe next lap as well.
Yeah, and Tom 97, after he got past Andy, Mr. Anker was able to find a way through the Red Bull drive as well. So now it's Red Bull's P12 and P13 outside of the points. And don't forget, they are battling with the Racing Point for that penultimate spot in the Constructors' Championship. So things not looking good for Red Bull at the moment. But this is Ben Sabo-Conye's chance. He gets closer to Nicolas Mateo, but not close enough. And Tom 97, he seems to have some really good tyre wear because all of a sudden he is really starting to find pace and really starting to climb up the order. And he might even have a look at the AlphaTauri driver on the next lap.
Yeah, he's definitely looking pretty good at this phase of the race now that Andy has been dispatched. Those soft tyres falling away for the Red Bull driver, who's probably going to be coming into the pits sooner rather than later, you'd have to expect. Wants to try and stay out, hoping for that safety car, but I don't think it's going to come. So Andy should be into the pits this lap. Nope, staying out for at least one more there on those soft tyres, despite the fact that they really are starting just to cost Andy time at this stage, hoping the DRS train will be enough to drag him along We'll see, as Arsene, his teammates, going to be pretty close behind him now.
Yep, Arsene Kardinov just 4/10 behind Andy. Tom 97 4/10 behind Ben Sabo Konyi. And Ben Sabo, he's almost a second behind Nicolas Matteo, so he's in a very tricky situation. And don't forget, Tom 97 was in this exact same situation last lap, where Andy had just dropped out of 1 second from Nicolas Matteo. So Tom 97 will definitely be fancying his chances, but Ben Sabo Konyi is within that 1 second zone as we make our way down into turn 11.
Yeah, and further up the order, I'm still looking at that ERS charge for Michael Romanidis. It is so high. It's 75% going down the back straight there. Tomek ahead, just in that braking zone, managed to get it up to 20% for a moment. So there's a huge delta in terms of the electrical charge available to these two drivers. But Michael Romanidis is not deploying it. He's not thinking about making moves on Tomek. He just doesn't want to right now. And I wonder if his plan is actually to try and overcut the car ahead or to undercut. Either way, he just wants to probably dump a lot of that overtake on whichever lap he is not facing the rear wing of that McLaren and look to overtake him either in the pits or when he doesn't go into the pits, whichever way it ends up being. But also he knows that if he keeps trying to battle with Tomek, if he tries to really take it to the Polish driver, then that's just going to let Jarno Opmeer escape even more out at the front.
Yep, well, Michael Romanidis will definitely be trying to jump ahead whenever he has a bit of clear air. We saw Tomek going for the undercut last time round in Mexico, and Arsene Kardinov will be looking to go underneath Andy down the inside into turn 1, and he makes it look easy, and all of a sudden Andy's soft tires are starting to drop. 11 laps into the race, does he head into the pits this lap round?
And the really frustrating thing for Arsene here as well is that Andy fell away from the DRS train of Tom 97 and Mr. Anchor that he was a part of. So now Arsene, as a result, has fallen away as well. 2 seconds up to those cars ahead. And with the pit stop phase ensuing right now, with Calcifer initiating it there, going from medium to medium. So that's committing to a 2-stop there for the Estonian driver. But yeah, Arsene needs to be within range of those guys if the pit stop's going to be happening soon to try and affect some sort of change of position in the pits.
Yeah, and I wonder what Calcifer's plan is. Is he going medium, medium, softs? And if that's the case, what does everyone else do? Are they looking to go medium harder to the end? Or do they think that they can take those mediums to something like lap 16, lap 15, and bung on a set of softs to the end? Because those softs, at least from Andy's perspective, seem to be definitely dropping off after about 9 to 10 laps.
Yeah, Michael Romanidis still, it's even higher. He's at 94. He almost got to 100% in the final corner. It's at 99. This guy is saving so much of his ERS charge right now. At some point, surely he has to deploy it because Tomek is starting to lose more and more time as well to Jarno Opmeer. So at this stage, the Greek driver in the Williams probably wants to get past the McLaren up ahead if he wants to try and keep Jarno Opmeer within reach.
And Andy's dived into the pits, so your soft tyre runner, the man who started the race on soft tyres, could only manage 11 laps on those softs. So I guess maybe, what would we say, 12 laps if you're then pitting onto soft tyres from these mediums?
Yeah, I'd say there or thereabouts. We'll have to see. I mean, the interesting thing is that Calcifer actually came in earlier than Andy there, despite having started on the mediums, and now they're actually going to be battling through the first corner here as Andy comes out of the pits just ahead of the Estonian and the Ferrari, and that's going to be frustrating for Calcifer.
Yeah, Calcifer behind. They're pretty much on the equal wear tyres, so I mean, I guess if you're either of these drivers, you don't really want to be battling, you just want to be working together, so you are in a decent position relative to the others who'll be on slightly older tyres. As Calcifer seems to be a little over the place, track extending at the end of Sector 1.
Yeah, he did pick up a penalty about a lap ago as well while pushing the Haas drivers, switching places for 13th and 14th there, but Kruzix might be able to make a move back at Josh. No, it's going to be Josh holding on to that one for now. The gap between Tomek and Jarno has started to stabilize once more. Jarno put on a bit of a push in the last few laps, but now at about 1.9 seconds, Tomek has stopped the bleeding. He does have Michael Romanidis to worry about. Still, yet to pull the trigger in the Williams. When is he going to do it? He has all this power available to him, and he's just not using it. And it's so sort of tantalizing to watch right now. I just want to see him absolutely floor it and take a go at Tomek, but I'm sure he's waiting for some sort of sign, some sort of, probably a pit stop of some kind.
Maybe the sign's a safety car, but at the moment it doesn't look like there will be any safety cars gracing us with their presence. doesn't look like there are going to be any rain either. No clouds have really come into the sky. It's nice and clear, nice and blue. All on the horizon. Tom 97 getting close to Ben Sabikoni, who is staying close to Nicolas Matteo, but now Ben Sabikoni doesn't get the best of runs, and Tom 97 could have a look down into turn 11. He'll go down the inside, and will he have the exit? It looks like Ben Sabikoni will get a slightly better exit, but they are side by side pretty much. Tom 97 slots back into the slipstream from the AlphaTauri and will squeeze his way past down the inside into turn 12 or into turn 11. Pardon me. Ben Sabikoni holding his AlphaTauri there, now on the inside into 13 and 14, but crucially Tom will have the inside into the double left-hander, and surely he takes the position. Indeed he will. Oh, there's contact right behind. Mr. Anker taps the rear end of Ben Sabikoni and spins him around, and the Hungarian will not be happy about that at all.
Yeah, Nicolas Matteo has just left the session as well. The car is ghosted. I noticed that it had the little red cross next to his name, and I was wondering why, because he hadn't left the session yet, but now he has. The Spaniard is out of control of that car, must have lagged out of the session or had some hardware issues, and Tom is going to get that position as well, driving clean through the ghosted Alfa Romeo. But yeah, that was an unfortunate way for that one to end for Ben Sabikoni. He's been battling left, right, and center with all kinds of different drivers. But this race started so nicely, but ever since that opening lap, it's only got worse and worse for him in that AlphaTauri. Right now, he's trying to at least make amends slightly by getting past Kruzix on the exit of turn 1, and he will do so. So at least there's that little crumb of comfort for him.
Yeah, and it's surprising that he's able to do that as well. Right after a spin, those tires would have been a little bit overheated, but that does not seem to affect the Hungarian at all, as he's got them back into that working window. He's ahead of Kruzix. He didn't pit on the lap, or at the end of the lap where he had his spin. And now Mr. Anker has found a way past Nicolas Matteo as well, who is still ghosting, and hopefully he can get back in and regain control of the car, because now Arsen Kardinov will surely be finding a way through in just a few moments.
Indeed, yeah, and Nicolas Matteo, the sooner he gets back, the better, but every second he's not getting back here, he's losing time out there on track. So if he can make it back, he will want to do it sooner rather than later. Both Racing Points are still staying well within touch of Romanidis and Paragic. So Tomek, driving a bit of a train still, has been doing so for the vast majority of this race, as we are now past halfway into this, and still just not much happening here. Michael Romanidis curiously content just to sit behind Tomek, and I wonder if he's losing his opportunity here. At some point, he's going to